China's consumption is huge. $7 trillion in 2023, 2024. That is more than 3 times India's. And remember, China has 1.4 billion people, but so does India. In fact, India has a little bit more. But if you consume China's consumption and India's consumption, that isn't even half of America's consumption. That's how much of the world's consumer base is in the United States. $18.8 trillion. But let's take an even deeper look. You would have to add China, Germany, India, the UK, France, Brazil, Italy, and Mexico's consumption to match what the United States spends in 1 year. Another freaking crazy way to look at it is that the United States consumes the equivalent of 3.5 trillion people in some of the most developed economies on the planet. And remember, we only have a population of about 330 million. And the reason why I am mentioning this to all of you is that this consumption, this huge strength, is also a major weakness that the people could use if they are unhappy with the current system. And I don't mean the administration, I mean the system as is. The only way the system does any real changes is if consumption will be affected. And you could see this on the micro scale with Disney. Remember, they suspended Jimmy Kimmel. They fired him. They were going to take him off the air. But because the consumers protested and started canceling their Disney subscriptions, Disney caved. Jimmy Kimmel's got his job back. That is a profound example of consumer strength. And remember, we are the consumers. And it isn't just Disney and a couple of other companies that are this vulnerable to the consumers, which is you and me. It is all of the companies. And who are the primary funders of the politicians that aren't actually representing us? Yes, these companies. So if you want your politicians to change, you have to start scaring these companies with your lack of consumption. The system, as it is, wants you to protest on the street so they can make an example of you. They also want you to keep voting. It doesn't even matter how red or blue it is, because in the end, these guys are both different sides of the same coin. Don't believe me? Just look at the average tax rate of the top 1%, Citizens United, healthcare reform, and how even though we did have, at times, very potent Democratic presidents who at some point had the House and the Senate with them on the blue side, they still couldn't get what they wanted done. Gee, I wonder why. It wasn't just because of the GOP. It was because the very wealthy will always have their interests put first. And what is the greatest concern of the wealthy? That you keep consuming and keep the money printing machine going. You stop consuming, you stop everything. If you keep consuming, you will get mediocre candidates on both sides of the aisle. You stop consuming, and these guys will do an overhaul to make sure they have candidates that can actually represent you to go back out into the market and keep consumption up. And it doesn't even have to be a huge drop in consumption. The 2008 recession saw a 2.3, a 2.5% drop in consumption, and you saw all of the bailouts and stimulus that was released. And then, of course, there's what happened with COVID, which was a 20% drop in about 3 months, and we saw what happened. Now, I'm not saying don't buy anything ever, because that's ridiculous, that's impossible. But if every American, on average, dropped their consumption by 2 or 5%, that would be the most loud and potent form of protest. And even the big wig system would be listening to us. So no, it's not seize the means of production. It is seize the means of consumption, your consumption. But the question is, are you willing to deal with the consequences of this kind of protest? Because it would be a little bit messy. People would start to lose their jobs, and there would be a great deal of economic downturn. But it really is the only way to ensure some kind of change happens in our favor and not the wealthiest. I am the Geo Husar, and help me get this going. Thanks for watching.